Hi, my name is Denise Hurd, and welcome back to another episode of How They See Us. If you're tuning in for the first time, How They See Us is a conversation with people about how they are seen in the communities that they live and that they work in. And if you are not new here, I am so glad you're able to join us. Welcome back. So, we are rounding out Pride Month. And I'm so excited about our conversation today because this is our 12th episode. 12th, our 12th episode. That is phenomenal. And so, though it is our first 12th, it is our 12th episode, it's our first podcast and our first conversation about pride, which totally boggles my mind because every year during the month of June, we celebrate our friends in the LGBTQIA plus community. And we celebrate that the community on our social media platforms, but we've never had a conversation. So if you know me, I love to talk. I love a conversation. And so this is very important. And I'm so glad that we're having this conversation today. So this month, when we were putting together this episode, we thought it would be really great to invite members of our LGBTQIA plus community to join us to talk about the changing landscape of the community here in Indiana. And what better way to do this is have a generational conversation. There's a lot that has transcended in our state and in our city over the years. So you can't know where you are if you don't know where you've been. So that's why we have the two guests that we have with us today. So joining me today is Ruth Norrington, and she is was a co-chair of the 1990 Pride Festival on Monument Circle. And I also have Marissa Smith Kinney, who is a digital strategist at Well Done Marketing. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Good morning.
Oh, I'm so glad to have you all here this morning, and I'm so excited about this conversation. So, just kind of let's go back in time. And so, Ruth, this question is for you. Can you take us back to 1990 when didn't we wear like acid wash jeans back then? Who the president was in 1990. But can you tell us about June 30th, 1990, and what happened on that day?
Certainly. Up until then, let me actually give you a little backstory. Until then, from about 1980 to 1990, Justice Inc. was the gay lesbian organization in the state, and they had never had anything open to the public to celebrate Pride. Up until then, it was a brunch at generally the Essex Hotel in June, or the last couple of years prior to that, they had a private picnic, which was out on the west side in a private park. So nothing that the general public could just come and attend and celebrate Pride. And so Eric Evans and I decided, working with Justice Inc., that we would like to co-chair an event and make it open to the public. We felt the Circle was the most known place in the state, and we wanted everyone to feel open and welcome to come to it. Free, you didn't have to hide behind buy tickets to an event, or you didn't have to hide behind going to a private club or a private park or anything like that. So what we did was we organized it. Actually, Mayor Hudnut was the mayor, Hudnut was the mayor then. He issued a proclamation welcoming the gay lesbian community to the event. And it was on the Circle. It was an event with some speakers, music by the Gay Men's Choir. We had a drag show. There were some protesters, but most of them just stood along the side of the Circle, and we had people that just kind of lined up in front of them, so there wasn't any problems with it. And I think we ended up having about 3,500 people there for the first event.
That's wonderful. That's a great turnout for your first event.
I'm sorry, pardon?
That's a wonderful showing for your first event.
It was indeed, yes.
Awesome. Awesome. So Marissa, so hearing all of this and hearing Ruth describe what she's described, how does that resonate with you today?
I think it's really interesting. We've gotten to a point now where pride has, for my generation, become an expectation in a way of we know June comes around and there are festivals, there are festivities. I knew immediately to go look at the calendar of events from Indie Pride, and that there would be a ton of things going on throughout the community and throughout the month. And we've gotten to a point now where even, specific neighborhoods in Indianapolis are hosting their own Pride, like Irvington is hosting their own. So, which I think is fantastic. At the same time, it does resonate with me to hear about the protesters of the first event, and how my friends and I have discussed that we don't always feel safe going to Pride or going to events for the community that are completely public for, those same kinds of reasons that still were happening in 1990.
Mm-hmm. So let's look at, since it's 1990, it's now 2023. So, a lot of time has passed. And though you talked about how sometimes you don't feel safe, Ruth, I'm not sure if that was an issue that impacted you all back in 1990, but I'd love for you to talk about that aspect of the event, and then also how things have changed over the years,
Sure.
Because there has been a lot of change.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so we had the event on the Circle in 1990. Then the next few years, we actually had a festival on the parks just south of the library. I can't remember the name of the park, that city parks there. Yes, and those were well attended, and actually got bigger and bigger. Mm-hmm. And then the parade started, and I must admit, by then I had children and I wasn't as involved anymore. But the parade started then, like about 20 years ago, I believe. And we honestly felt very, very safe. I mean, we took our kids to the parade, to the activities, all of those then. And I never felt unsafe. Even in 1990, we had the protesters, but I didn't feel unsafe there. And I would guess it's only been maybe in the last 4 or 5 years that I think safety has really been an issue. Probably since about 2019, 2018, with the political climate changing as it has in the past 5, 6 years, 7 years now, since 2016, basically, it has become, I feel, much more physically feeling less safe than it was in the past. Mm-hmm. And to your point, Marissa, I spoke with a few young people this year that were like, yeah, we're going to the parade, but I'm kind of questioning how safe I feel there. And that never was the case before. I mean, I think there was you could have a disagreement, but you didn't necessarily feel unsafe for having a disagreement. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and in terms of how it's changed, I mean, now the parade is like, with the parade and the crowd, 25,000 people, I think, attended this year for the parade. And then the festival, an additional, 20-some thousand or approximately 20-some thousand people. Mm-hmm. That's just fabulous. And it's a family event now. I mean, if you go to the parade, it's one of the most fun, happiest parades in the city. Kids, families, all sorts of people attend. Whereas, of course, back in 1990, it was predominantly the gay lesbian community, and now it's actually more LGBTQ plus community that's attending. Mm-hmm.
So anything, thoughts about changes that have happened that you were like, wow, this is, have there been any aha moments that you've all have witnessed, that you've seen over the years?
Well, for me, just the breadth of people that attend now, it's fabulous. And I think that's, as I said, the families that come, I remember back in 1990, PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, when they spoke at the event, they would get the largest crowd of people and applause supporting them, because it was like, yes, we appreciate you supporting the community. And now it's it's just so many different people that are either a part of the community or support the community. The younger generation, as Marissa probably knows, it's not an issue really for them that people are gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgendered or anything like that. Whereas in the past, of course, that was more of an issue.
So shifting gears, just last year, the LGBTQIA plus historical marker was commemorated on Monument Circle. I think it was last August was when that happened. And so as one of the co-chairs of the first celebration on the circle, what does that mean to you?
It was such an honor and a surprise. I guess I never thought of Indianapolis as being a community that was going to celebrate that. And so it was just really, truly an honor and a wonderful surprise to see that. I think it's great because now people that are visiting the city get to see it and maybe question what all happened and all of that. And as Marissa was pointing out about the smaller communities, Spencer has a huge Pride celebration every year. And so if those smaller communities come into the city, now they can see what's happening and proud of that.
Marissa, what are your thoughts about the monument on the circle, the historical marker on the circle?
Yeah, I really resonate with what Ruth was saying about how, it doesn't always feel like maybe that Indy would be a community to celebrate something like that. So it's wonderful to hear that it has been celebrated. And, I think local history is something that I really appreciate learning about. And it's important to understand that intersects in so many different ways with the queer community, with the Black community, and so many others. So I think it's really wonderful that we literally have that documented for everyone to see now.
That's it's pretty amazing and very forward thinking for our city to do something of that nature. I want to talk about
I was just going to say Indianapolis often feels like a little separate from the whole state because the state, has such regressive policies and laws. And then you have Indianapolis, which is kind of like the beacon of the state.
Yeah, I think some people say we're blue in a sea of red. So yeah, I get it. We're like on an island, but then the state mandates things that we have to do that go against things that we want to do as a city and a county. So that actually your comment is a great pathway into what I want to talk about next, and that's activism, because that's so important, activism and even advocacy. And in this day and age, we need actually both of them. And so I would love to hear your involvement and even guidance on how individuals can get involved with respect to activism and even advocacy as well. And that's for both of you all to talk about.
I think for me, one thing that comes to mind immediately is that folks who are allies or want to be good allies might feel intimidated because they feel like that they have to be out there at the State House, like, holding up signs every day or something like that. And it can feel overwhelming to feel like, there are so many issues, so many bills, so many things going on. How do I make change? So I think it's important to remember that you can have an impact on the people directly in your life, on the queer people directly in your life, just by listening to them, using their correct pronouns, being respectful of their identities, and being willing to do your own education and not put that work on the queer people that you have around you. That's something that, I've experienced a lot, particularly in more corporate spaces as a queer person, is trying to find the balance between, I want folks to be educated on things such as, gender pronouns and using the correct pronouns for folks and the importance of sharing them. But at the same time, it can be tiring as somebody who is a part of the queer queer community. So helping people find resources that they can then go do their own education, I think is always helpful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I think it's very important to understand people where they are and how they want to be identified. As a professor, I misidentified one of my students several semesters ago, and the pain I caused him, I'll never forget. It's like I'll never, and I know better. And I made a mistake. And so I think what has to happen though is sometimes we need grace also as we're all learning each other. And I think that would be my counsel for any type of conversation that we would have where we're talking about how people are seen or how they want to be seen, is just a level of grace that needs to exist while we're trying to migrate our way through this thing called life, and understand one another. Because I don't think across the board people set out, well, there are some people that set out to be wrong, but I think for the most part, people set out to be right. And so I think you're right, just getting to know and having a conversation and understanding and learning. And there are great resources out there as well. I mean, I remember attending a workshop that was led by Indie Pride that helped me understand how to understand pronouns, don't say this, say this, different slang and jargon to avoid. So I think it's very important that people educate themselves.
Yeah, and a quick tip on, if you do misgender someone, correct yourself, apologize, and move on. I think a common mistake is for folks to over apologize, and ultimately, whether this is the intention or not, that ends up making it about you. And it's best to really just fix it and move on. So for anybody out there that's ever done that, it's all totally okay. It happens.
Thank you for adding that, because I think that there is that, we as humans, don't ever want to be wrong. Right. And we don't ever want to find out that we hurt somebody's feelings, because that takes us to a whole another level of guilt and wanting to make it right. And don't be mad and please forgive. So I love it. It's apologize and move on, because you've moved on. You've moved on. So the person should as well. I want to shift gears a minute, because we've had a lot of things happening that have impacted, and we talked about it briefly, but the political climate, and a lot of things happening, not even at the state level and even at the federal level, that are impacting the quality of life for, members of our queer community. And so I would love to have a conversation with you all and talk about that, and, what we need to do, or why we think this is happening, and what we can do to ensure that individuals' rights are protected.
Well, I think as Marissa was talking about safety, this has probably been one of the first years, or the worst years recently, that has been a safety issue for so many people in the gay, lesbian, and bisexual, transgender community. We have had over 650 laws been introduced in the states over the last year, many here in Indiana. The transgender care, the banning of books, all of those things are so detrimental to the communities, to the safety, as Marissa was mentioning, of people. It's just the beginning of it, and it's widespread. Much of it has been mirrored off of the Florida, DeSantis, Florida's kind of policies. The other Republican-led states, including Indiana, are taking up. The policies are just so negative to people's mental health and to people's physical health. And it's a battle we have to keep fighting. I mean, I was hoping by now, after we got marriage equality, that then we would try to get the regular equality overall passed. Now we're just trying to stay at the rights that we have previously have enjoyed. And that's just been really a challenging, difficult march.
Yeah, within the last year, especially, my partner, who is trans, and I have had, times where we have looked at each other and been like, do we move? Where would we move to? because at this point, it often feels like it's coming from all sides, at least, you know, across the United States. And I think something to think about when we think about the political climate is, yes, trans people in particular are being attacked, and they're being attacked as a distraction, which is a tactic that we have seen throughout history again and again and again. If we, you know, if there is a political party that doesn't like when progress is being made, they will find a new issue to cry out about. And I think this is just the latest one. It's really unfortunate that it has really, you know, caught on like wildfire and become such a trendy topic. But I do think that there is a lot of hope as we're moving forward, you know, and I am speaking with people who are my age and younger who are like, this is just absolutely ridiculous. And just the way, you know, they won't put up with it. And we're getting more and more, you know, younger voters. And frankly, I just think that a lot of these policies come from people being very scared that they are losing their grip of power on the world.
Their power.
And that's typically what happens is they go after the least vulnerable or the most vulnerable population. And so right now the transgender community, 1.6% of the population. I mean, a small, but by the amount of attention that it's receiving, you would think that it's like the biggest threat to America, you know, which of course it's not at all. And that's just super frustrating. The policies, hopefully the courts will rectify a little bit of it. That's beginning now. There's been a little bit of court stopping some of like some of the bills that are being passed across the country. But I think, Marissa, you made a really good point about wanting to leave the state. And for companies, they have got to be aware that younger people are looking at their policies and saying, well, why would I want to move to Indiana to work for your company? Because, you know, I don't have reproductive rights. I have all these other restrictive rights. That's got to be an issue for some of these companies. You know, in the past, Lilly and Salesforce have been two of the strongest companies that have been like opposing some of this legislation.
I think that's particularly pertinent for Indiana and Indianapolis. We know we are a tourist town. We thrive on bringing in conventions, as we saw with RFRA. That hurts us greatly when, you know, we fall prey to these hate-filled policies. And there's going to be fallout from this. So it's ultimately really short-sighted.
Yes.
Yeah, RFRA did a number on the state. It was very eye-opening. And I think also RFRA, you know, the timing of RFRA, it couldn't have been better for leading into Pride Month. I mean, it was almost like it was an explosion at the parade that year where you saw corporations, banks, you know, all sorts of organizations coming out and saying like, hey, you know, we stand together, you know, we stand with you. And so that was an amazing coming together of our community against something that was so blatantly discriminatory.
Yes.
So just so blatantly discriminatory that it was just unfathomable. So I do think that it's important. That's why I think the whole advocacy is very, very important in being involved in, like the kids say, being woke. And you're right, Marissa, you don't have to go down and hold a sign. You can write letters. You know, you can testify. There's a lot that you can do that's not as, you know, that's not your thing, but it's very important that we remember, like you all said, it's whenever an entity feels like they're losing control, then they look at who can they bully, you know, in order to have a perception of control. And unfortunately, it's being turned towards, you know, 1.6% of our population.
Yeah. I would, to on your note about sending a letter, Denise, I would really encourage folks to bookmark the ACLU of Indiana's website and keep an eye there. They do a wonderful job of tracking the bills that are going through the State House, and they do have forms directly on their website that you can quickly fill out in like 30 seconds that will send a message directly to your appropriate legislator.
Oh, that's awesome to know. We'll make sure that we share that information as well.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Mm-hmm.
And the other big organization, in addition to ACLU, ICLU, is Human Rights Campaign. Mm-hmm. And they also really track what's going on and keep you really informed on things.
Okay. Thank you. And we'll make sure we share that as well. So Marissa, I've got a question for you, because I would be remiss if I didn't ask you that as a communication professional, have you seen communication and marketing change over the years? And Ruth, I'd love to know your opinion on that as well, because you've seen a lot over since 1990. So, so Marissa, your thoughts?
Yeah, I certainly think that it has. You know, I have had the privilege of kind of serving in these DEI and like education-based spaces in my professional roles. And from when I first started out several years ago at this point to now, it's wonderful to have seen how much more open people are to learning and to having hard mm-hmm. conversations. Mm-hmm. I think that's one of the most hopeful things to see is that, you know, like we were talking about earlier, it's okay to mess up. Like there are going to be mistakes made. The most important thing is that you're willing to take accountability for your mistakes and also do some education to, you know, hopefully prevent those in the future. So, you know, as one example, within the past few months had an all staff presentation on gender pronouns here at Well Done Marketing. And, you know, toward the end, we just opened up the floor for questions. And there were a few of us who, myself included, who, you know, said, I'm a member of the queer community. I'm on staff. For right now, you are free to ask questions. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I wasn't sure what the response was going to be. I wasn't sure how open people would be to that, but they really did just mm-hmm. start opening up and asking things. And we created a really open dialogue that I think was ultimately beneficial for everybody. So
what you did is you created a safe place. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of times that's what we need. I think a lot of the hate monging and the angst comes from not understanding and having a safe place to ask questions. Because if we just ask and we talk to one another, and the fact that you made yourself vulnerable to, because, you know, and I, you know, as a Black person, when I say you can ask me anything, you get some pretty crazy questions thrown right. Like, oh, I'm clutching my pearls right now, but you're trying to look nice and sweet and smile. Mm-hmm. And say, this person really asking me this question? But they need a safe place. And so, you know, kudos to you for making yourself vulnerable and open to to someone or your team, you know, talking to you in a safe environment. So, Ruth, any thoughts from your perspective?
Just obviously in 1990, there was like no marketing to the gay lesbian community. I should say that there was a few. I mean, you know, advertisements in magazines and things.
Wasn't that Will and Grace? When did Will and Grace air? You know, everyone was
I think it started in the 90s. Yeah, mm-hmm. I mean, so, we had a few shows, but very little. So obviously, since then, we've had, you know, much with corporations sponsoring mm-hmm. and promoting. And now we're seeing a little bit of a backlash with that, too, with the whole rainbow kind of washing or cleansing of companies. Yeah. Whereas, you know, for years you've had like, in fact, someone had mentioned to me the other day, they saw pride flowers at Kroger's. And I'm like, Kroger has done that for probably at least 8 or 9 years, where they've had like a special feature on balloons and flowers and stuff. Mm-hmm. Target, the same thing. But now they're seeing the protesters saying, oh, well, we don't want you to do that. Mm-hmm. And they're kind of backing off from it. And so mm-hmm. It's that whole circle again of something they've done for years. Target, Kroger, other corporations have done marketing for years, and now they're getting the backlash from it, and they're beginning to like, okay, well maybe we won't do it, you know.
Right.
And so it's a huge buying power. The gay lesbian LGBTQ plus buying power is large, and so corporations have to look at that.
Yep, dollars. It's all about the dollars.
It's about the mighty dollar. You got
it. It is. And so if you've got, you've hit, certain demographics, you've had your general consumer market. Now you've tapped into your African American consumer market. You've tapped into your Hispanic consumer market. Okay, now my sales are level. Who else do I need to look at? And then here you go. So you have to make decisions. Where do you want to fall from an economic perspective as well? So yeah, that's and money makes the heart sing. So
exactly. And that's one of the things the Human Rights Campaign does every year is they look at corporations and rate them on a number of things, from diversity and policies and healthcare and all sorts of things, and then they rate them. And for me, that's one of the things I always do is I look exactly at a company before I buy there, is where are they on the equality rights? And so for me, that is a dollar I choose or not choose to spend.
Absolutely, because it's your discretionary income, and
exactly.
So you decide how it will be spent. Absolutely. So I'm getting the signal that it's almost time for me to wind down. It went really, really fast. But before I close out, are there any final thoughts or comments that either of you would like to share as we, talk about pride and pride through the generations?
No, other than I'm just kind of looking forward to seeing what the future holds. I really feel that we are on the cusp of the regressive policies that we've seen the last few years going away. I mean, I'm always the optimist, so I'm always hoping that that's the case, that it's going to begin to change. But I have such faith in the younger population. I really do, that they are the ones that are going to lead us back into a good dialogue and good policies.
I think so too. Marissa, any thoughts?
I would just reiterate that I think, there is always a small action that you can take. And, sometimes, that means just listening to the queer people in your life, especially lately when there's a day that the news is just filled with awful stuff. There's not always something positive or reassuring you can say. You can just say, yeah, this really sucks. This is really hard. And sometimes, that can mean a lot.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you both for joining us. I truly, truly appreciate it. Happy Pride Month to you both.
Thank you.
And thank you for all the work that you're doing to make sure equality is experienced throughout our entire city and our state. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
So there you have it. A conversation through the generations with our LGBTQIA plus community here in Indianapolis. Thank you for watching this episode of How They See Us. We had a great conversation. I invite you to share this with a friend, and also make sure you follow us on all our socials for our upcoming episodes as we continue this series. We love talking to people about how they're seen and how they want you to see them, and how we can see each other in a more respectful and welcoming way. So as I close out, I would be remiss if I didn't say hooty hoo to Selena Coles, who is our producer of this program. She is our account manager here at Herd Strategies, and she makes sure that I stay honest and make sure that I stay on task. And she also makes sure I don't stray from the script, because, I'm a talker and I'll do that. So thank you, Selena, for all your hard work putting this episode together and all the other previous episode 12. How They See Us, talking with members of our LGBTQIA plus community. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day.